Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Discourse for today, December 22nd, 2022. I'm your host, Tristan. Hello. Hello, friends. Merry holiday. Much Christmas. Many holiday. Wow. How's everyone been? How's everyone doing? This is the Discourse. I guess I should probably actually say the things that I set out to say and I wrote down so that I didn't miss. Sorry we're a little bit late getting started. I was just busy. I had just gotten home from a meeting and I had about 10 minutes to stuff anything into my face today. So that was that. I am Tristan. I'm the host of the YouTube channel Step Back, which you can find at stepbackhistory.com. If you want, I'm also the co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens, which you can find at probsnotaliens.com. I stream on Fridays at noon, although I will say today is my last stream of 2023. Because I'm trying to take next week off as much as I can. But if you want to support my work, you can go to nebula.tv/stepback and sign up for Nebula. If you sign up via that link, you help me out immensely. If you go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory and sign up there, you also are helping me out. And if you leave super chats, those are of course not ever required. I try to make my content, my mic sounds quiet. Let me just try to move it over here then. Alright. Hopefully this will be better. I don't know. Anyways. Yeah. My content, I always try to make it free forever, but of course, all the ways of support are appreciated to help keep this thing running, because as everybody learned last week, as everyone learned last week, Step Back is not, cutting it in the money department for me to kind of keep doing full time. So that's just that. That's just life. Sometimes things happen. All right. If you want to submit questions to, one more. My latest video is on the Land Back movement. It came out last week. People seem to like it. My next video, coming out sometime in January, is going to be about Palestine. Gonna be a really fun collaboration with an old friend of mine, so I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, look forward to that. Also, if you want to, not aware there's gonna be a stream today. It's Friday though. I guess I was so bad at streaming these last few months that now people just assume there's not going to be a stream unless I say otherwise. Anyways, if you have any questions you want to submit for this or future streams, I'm going to put a link in the chat. You can go there, or you can go to the link that's right here. And also new people. If there is any new folks in the chat who want to say hello, please say hello. If this is your first time here, we've got a great chat community that's very supportive, very cool. Join on in. Become friends. Join this little Christmas party. Yeah, we'll have a good time together. I was just thinking you were not going to stream since we are basically entering the holiday season. Fair enough. What's it called? I was trying very, very hard to have today be my last work day. But today has turned into a confluence of bullshit. I had a bunch of random errands that I have to do today. So now I have most of it's good. I have to go pick up my new car, and by new I mean my car that is probably older than some of the people in this chat, from the garage. I have to, and then at 5 o'clock I have, which after this stream ends at 2 o'clock, I have to go get the car. And then at 5 o'clock, I have to go to a party. So, in the brief time between when I get the car back home and when I have to go to this party, I have to finish Positive Leftist News. So that's like, you know, that's that I have to finish Positive Leftist News. So, and already I've already had to concede the fact that on Boxing Day I'm going to have to put a podcast together. So I had this whole plan to not work next week and enjoy some time off after a very, very stressful year. And but a bunch of podcast editing got dropped in my lap, and I just ran out of time. So I got to work. I've got to work during the holidays, sadly. But I should be okay. It shouldn't be too much. It should just be like, you know, if ever the worst comes to worst, if I don't finish Positive Leftist News today, I'll probably have to work a little bit on Saturday, and then I'll have to work on Boxing Day to get the podcast finished. That's it. So hopefully that'll not take too long. Hello from Washington State. Well, hello, Kaduku and Maxime Limoges. Welcome. Okay. What? Oh, yeah. Well, before we get going into the stuff, so this stream starts with victories. The reason is because even for happy Christmas streams, it's Step Back we're talking about, so we tend to veer into, you know, dark and depressing subjects. So I like to start every stream with a little bit where we celebrate each other's victories. We hand over the W's, where we talk about things that we succeeded at, small or big, and we all just, you know, enjoy a little moment of us being happy because we won. I mean, I can definitely start with quite the W this week, which is the fact that Tristan, I don't know if you, so to kind of, I have to try to find I'm trying to think about how much I need to summarize the entire thing. So, Canada is shitting its pants economically pretty badly. We had a massive inflation problem, which caused a bunch of companies to think that they could raise prices willy-nilly and not have to worry about any consequences, because they really didn't. So everything tripled in price, food especially. To combat inflation, which it wasn't inflation, it was people raising their prices. To combat that, they decided that they needed to make everyone's mortgages more expensive. So they jacked up interest rates, making it so that mortgages are going to get more expensive. And then yeah. So and when you jack up interest rates on a country that has made real estate its number one largest industry that contributes to GDP, the entire fucking country implodes. And so Canada is now probably going to be at the bottom of. I was just reading an article that said that Canada is probably going to be, for the next several years, if not several decades, at the bottom of the OECD countries, and is likely going to grow way slower than other countries and be far behind the pace of other countries when it comes to economic growth. And that pretty much laid out that everyone of my generation is going to expect a pretty dismal economic future for the rest of our working lives. So that happened, and I'm right in the middle of that. And all that happened while, I spent years doing Step Back full-time for the last 4 years, and Step Back has been fine. We had a decent balance going where we could still live a pretty happy, comfortable life, despite the fact that Step Back didn't make a whole lot of money. I made below minimum wage, I worked more than full-time hours, and we kind of just, we made it work until everything tripled in price, and now none of us can afford anything. And then on my birthday a couple weeks ago, my wife got laid off from her work, and so I basically, the conclusion came to that Step Back is going to have to take second place again, and I'm going to have to go find a real job, basically. And I decided that last Friday I should make a post telling everybody that I was doing this because I wanted everyone to understand why I was like, slowing down my content production, and hopefully have people understand, this change, because, I have patrons who are invested in my project as something that they're partially, they have put money into making happen. And I just needed to know, so everyone, just that people knew, my videos weren't going to come out as often, and I was going to have to find other things to do to sort of make everything work. And the outpouring of support that came from that video has been insane. I had friends that I hadn't talked to in years reach out to me. I got a couple people who have offered me like work, like freelance sort of stuff. I have, a bunch of people took the opportunity to sign up for Patreon to do PayPal donations, and it was just it was too much for me to emotionally process how much people, this project, this thing that I do, which very often is a very lonely job. I don't have anybody I co-work with. It's very quiet, very alone. And so you kind of don't really get to understand how much this stuff affects people until something like this happens and everyone comes out to tell you what happened. And it's been absolutely wild. So that would be my win, is that I didn't realize how big a deal this little YouTube channel I made was to so many people. And so I'm hoping that in the new year, depending upon where we wind up, because my wife's got to find new work, which means that we might have to move if we can move, because we'd have to sell this house, and something like twice as many houses are going up for sale as are being sold right now. So that might be a tall order. I might have to end up losing a bunch of money on this house, and then we'd have to probably stop owning and probably have to rent again in something in the GTA. So who knows what next year's gonna be, but once I actually know, then go and find work and do some stuff. That's my hope. There was a little bit where we were seriously considering that we might end up having to move to Ottawa, where we would thinking about living in Gatineau. That's not even off the table. Might be a thing. But either way. It wasn't inflation, it was just people raising prices. Well, okay. What happened is that Canada did experience inflation. Inflation is basically when there is a disconnect between demand and supply. When there's not enough supply and there's too much demand, prices go up. And that happened, but then it worked itself through pretty quickly because our supply chains are pretty robust. But then, because Canada's economy works in a way where most major industries are owned by a handful of corporations that basically collaborate with each other in a sort of cartel situation. So a bunch of companies realize that they could be well, if we just say inflation, we can just keep raising prices and no one can stop us. The government's not going to do anything. So why don't we just do that? And so the Weston family, which is the company that owns one of our big grocery store chains, has been making record profits and have just been raising prices because they know that everyone needs to buy food, and they'll just keep doing it because they just can get away with it. And the only thing the government did in response was make them pinky swear that they'll lower prices, which never happened. So it's just keeps getting worse, and they don't care. And basically, that's just sort of going to be the story all around for the whole country. That's going to be fun. Canada is dying as a country. We are so fucked. It's insane. Also, in the last quarter was the highest rate of emigration in Canadian history since or at least the highest emigration rate in Canada in something like 70 or 80 years. emigration, I meant, not immigration, which means that there were more Canadian citizens leaving to other countries for the first time in many decades. So yeah. Our situation has been compared to Greece, which is real fun. Anyways. That's a whole thing. That's a different thing. Anyways. Pim has said that they have an extremely quiet week, so not much of a win today. Finish the tabletop one-shot thing that you're doing with your mother for Christmas, so that is something. That should be fun. So my W of the week has been on Monday. I was appointed and voted 7-0 by the board to be the village historian. And I visited the county archives, which was cool. Tons of records and stuff. Oh, that is very fun. That is really awesome. On Friday after the stream, I got high for the first time. It was fun. Excellent. That is always a good time. I remember the first time I got high. It was rough. Or no, it wasn't rough. It was fun. But it was New Year's Eve. And we were kind of out wandering the streets of the suburban city I grew up in, Burlington. And it was fun. But it was probably not the best way to smoke weed for the first time. But we were like a small group of friends that we had no plan. It was New Year's and we had no plans, and there was a New Year's Eve party happening, but we weren't invited. So, but all of our other friends were, and they were there. So we just kind of wandered around and got high, and then we're like, let's go to that party. And then we kind of went there, and it was, I don't remember much after that, but yeah. You have to deal with Canadians who cannot bike in the future, near future, aren't I? Maybe. First the Americans, now the Canadians as well. A menace on the road. Oh boy. Happy holidays from Tar Books. Nice. Paul V's W is that they made it to the stream. Congratulations. Great thing to do. Your W is that reading Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer and really enjoying it. That's awesome. I am currently reading a book. Wow. Very accurate. I'm reading, I gotta remember the author's name. I'm currently reading a book called The Jasmine Throne, which is like a fantasy novel. I had not read it, or I tried reading it once, but it was a bit too complicated for me. Like, I was trying to read it as an audiobook, but this is a very complicated fantasy novel, so I needed to like sit and read it so that I could go back and like write down names and Google stuff. It's by Tasha Suri, and I like it a lot. And one of the main reasons why I like struggled to get the audiobook in is also because it's based on like Indian mythology, which means that like a lot of the characters and the names of places all have like Indian sort of like Hindi names. And so sometimes that, as someone who doesn't speak Hindi and isn't Indian, that like once you get like a bunch of list of proper nouns that are all like these like kind of Indian things, you get kind of like, I'm like, oh, who is that? What is that? What's the thing? But I think it'll be pretty cool. I'm enjoying it. I'm like a couple hundred pages in now, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. My W is that the new version of my TTRPG system is almost finished for 2 years of development. Sweet. See, this is one of those things that I wanted to do with my like week off, is I wanted to do some more game design work, because that's a thing that I really always want to work on, but I can never justify the time because I have to make video. I have to be dad. I have to be husband. I have to, do freelance work. I have to I have to do all of the things. And I don't have time for working on my what's the thing I really want to work on? Working on my game that I have described as, what do I call this? Jaipur meets Sushi Go is the closest I could. Meets Iron Chef meets Futurama. That's how I'm describing the sort of game I'm working on right now. I had an idea for another like I then was like kept awake at night last night because I had this idea for another game, and then I was like trying to think about how it would work, and then I'm like, oh fuck, it's gonna be like, it has to be a video game, and I'm like, I don't want to do a video game. Video games sound impossible because you have to like learn how to make music, and you have to learn how to draw, and then you have to learn how to program, and I'm like, fuck that. So I'm gonna find a way to make it, you know, simplify it down so that it can work as a tabletop game. Daniel's W this week is that they've kept their house clean enough to run the robot vacuum nearly every day. No more dusty floors for the 9-month-old to crawl around on. Oh, that's good. Yeah, we had a robot vacuum for a little while too, and it was great. But then it got like, I don't know what happened. It died because anytime it, you know, cleaned up, like it got stuff stuck in it, I guess it just did one thing too many and it just stopped working. Those robot vacuums can be finicky, and you almost have to like get ready to properly clean the house so that the robot vacuum can actually vacuum. It's really weird. I have finished most of my work before I'm off for a week. I guess that's a W. Good job. My W has been building up, but today is day 33 of me practicing guitar every day. Made a lot of progress in the last month, and looking forward to getting a little bit better every day. That is so awesome. I have a acoustic guitar that has been sitting in my closet for years because I'm trying to find a slice. My whole thing, everything that's like me wanting to do things is all like, I would love to do thing. Unfortunately, I get like 90 minutes of free time a day. And that 90 minutes is going to... Okay, in actuality, I get about 3 hours of free time a day, total, to do anything that is not working and parenting. And because people have been getting mad at me for being a stressed out monster, at least an hour of that has to be me doing something sort of relaxing. That is actually something that I want to do. The rest of it is usually made up of me doing housework, but also trying to work on various creative projects, which usually, you know, probably 50% of the time is just me doing more work, because I have a whole thing where I take the first hour after my son goes to bed to work on things like my, you know, my RPG prep, or for, you know, like my, like working on, like baking, or on like game design or anything, those things. I get like 1 hour for that, and then after housework, I have about 1 hour before I have to go to bed, because it'll be like 5 a.m. when the kid gets up the next morning. So I have to like, what's it called? I have to, very, very, like the second that it's time for the kid to go to bed, I have like an extremely packed schedule, because basically it is my everything that is not work, and everything that is not work and parenting time is this like 1 3-hour stretch. It's insane. Anyways. All right. And tonight it's going to be primarily because of the meeting and because of the stream and because of the car. My evening is probably going to be primarily made up of, like, you know, running the dishwasher and like cleaning the house and doing all of that stuff, because I didn't have any time to get any of that today. And also I'll probably have to, you know, do all of the work that I have to do today to get positive. Today is just an insane day. Sorry. If you bike in the harbor over by accident, well, I'm not going to say I wouldn't jump in and get you out, but I wouldn't be yelling at you afterwards. It's all right, Pim. There was a time not long ago where our more serious we were considering, and this might not even be off the table even, it depends, but like right now it's like we're looking for any work, not just like whatever we can do. But one of the ideas when we were playing around with the idea that like, oh, we could move anywhere, was actually not moving to the Netherlands, but moving to Belgium. Because Belgium is a place where my wife could find a work that would not require like working in French, but that we could give our kid a French education. So Belgium was like on our list there for that reason. Even though they drink wheat beer, which I don't like, but whatever. Hefeweizen tastes like rotten bananas, but anyways. Let's see. Sorry, I got zipped ahead. Here in Chile, we repelled the far right's proposal for a new constitution. I was so effing tired that it may pass. Or you're so effing terrified that it might pass. Well, that's good. Because like Chile sadly had a chance to have a good new constitution and that failed. So I'm guessing that this other new constitution was like a terrifying mirror of that. My win. After overcoming a flu last weekend, tested negative for COVID, thank goodness. I've been baking for 4 days and should have a dozen types of cookies to give out for the holidays. That is awesome. I also have a bunch of cookies I want to make for the holiday, which will be making up most of my my time, like my 1 hour of creative time. We have a gingerbread house that I need to put together. I want to make my famous spicy ginger snaps. This time I might even like buy some ginger beer and put it in the batter. That'd be fun. I have some other cookie experiments I want to make. I want to make Mexican double chocolate cookies where I put cinnamon and vanilla and cayenne pepper into the batter to make cookies. I heard you can make cookies with pistachio pudding mix, and I want to try that. But we'll see if I can ever get to any of those. All right. Three hours sounds like a lot, but on days I only have 3 hours of free time, I want to cry. Well, let me tell you what it's like to have a child. Let's see. My sons turned 13 and 11 last month. That's probably the first year I've been able to start doing hobbies again. There is hope for you. Be patient. Okay. So all I got to do is wait for about 9 years and I'll be good. So 2032, I can have hobbies again. Good to know. I have a, what's it called? I have a baby who is turning 2 next month. Keep in mind that Belgium has a French and a Flemish part, so you would need to move to the French part in the south. My hope is that I would move to Brussels. Or somewhere, somewhere in the Brussels area. My guess is that in Brussels, you could probably find a place to live where you can speak French and that you can send a kid to a school in French. Opinions on Montreal. Rent is not so bad, still not good. I would love to move to Montreal. The main problem is that because of Quebec's language laws, like my wife doesn't. I'm not fluent. Like my French is not fluent enough that I could work in it, and my wife doesn't speak French. So for her to be able to work, like if she had the job that she just lost, which was one where she could work remote, and like she could be 100% remote, then moving to Montreal would be great because it's a big city, but it also has like decently low, like it's decently cheap to live in. The rents are a lot lower than say like Toronto, and like, you know, the housing is not so insane in Montreal, but Quebec has a bunch of laws that are designed so that, you know, there's no place where you can work in Montreal where if you don't speak French. If you can't speak French in Quebec, you basically can't work. And so we would not be able to do that. You have twins? 2 is a really fun age. My daughter is 2.5, and it's wonderful. She's excited about everything and can finally communicate that. Yeah, that part is going to be fun. Quebec desperately wants an ethno-state. It's not so much an ethno-state as it is like a linguo-state. Because like Quebec and like many francophones, their identity is so tied up in being in the language. And so Quebec is very much just trying to, like, a lot of its laws are based around like trying to prevent Quebec from just turning into, because you think about it, if you think about like the sort of forces of economics and politics in being a French-speaking province in North America, if they didn't actively work to do these things, then the province would be entirely English-speaking like very quickly. So they want to. So they do these things because they're trying to protect their language, which a lot of French people see as their identity. So it's not like I'm faulting them for it. It just means that, like, even though I love Montreal, I would never be able to, unless like that law changed, we wouldn't be able to live there. And it's like, yeah, it's really like rent is really cheap in Montreal, and it's for this reason. It's because very few people can actually, like, you know, have the language skills to be able to work there. Let's see. Let's not forget their ban on religious symbols. Yeah, that is more how Quebecois and like French Canadian racism or French racism works. Is that they will not say like what they'll be like they'll be like, because like the thing is, like, Quebec actively discriminates against Muslims. It's brutal. And the reason that the way they do it is that they say that this is a secular province, which means that and unlike in like in the Anglosphere, where secular means that anybody can practice, you know, any religion they want. In Quebec and in like the French-speaking world, the idea of secular means that you have to, like, if you are going to work in any sort of public sector, you cannot have anything that resembles being religious. And so, like, Quebec has a rule where if you are going to be a public service worker, which means like if you're a teacher or if you work in the government or anything, you can't have any religious symbols on you. And that is almost tailor-made to discriminate against people who wear hijabs and turbans. Technically, it also means crucifixes, but I mean, like, Quebec's Assemblée Nationale, their government, has a crucifix hanging in their parliament. So if that is what they mean, they don't mean it that hard, I guess, because it's almost exclusively used to discriminate against women who wear hijabs at the workplace and people who wear turbans. Anyways. And following Canada's UBI bill, for what I can find, is still in discussion. Unfortunately, it's been in discussion for like 2 years now. But how much could that help you in the situation if it passes? If I mean, it would be highly dependent upon two things. One, how much money it would be, and two, like what kind of effect that kind of finances would have on other cost of living expenses. Like, the main thing that I'm concerned about, and the law would have to find ways to deal with this, would be like, how would if you were to give $1,000 a month to everybody in the country, in like a couple years of that, how do you prevent like all rents going up by $1,000, or all the prices on all of the commodities and stuff like that going up, so that basically like give it like a couple years and everybody is in the exact same situation, just, you know, that all the prices of everything just went up to compensate. Because Canada is a country where it is a country where a handful of corporations pretend to be a government, and everything is done explicitly just to help a handful of extremely wealthy people. And if we put in a basic income pilot or a basic income program, these companies, like the frickin' cartel that runs our grocery stores, would just jack up prices because they know they can do it and the government won't stop them. So like, I don't know where, like, we would need, like, for UBI to really work in our country, and Canada specifically, we would need to impose some pretty strict price controls, and I don't see us doing that. Now, if that happens, if we get our UBI, but it doesn't result in like my cell phone bill going up by $1,000 a month, or my, like, you know, my mortgage going up by $1,000 a month or something like that, then I would be ecstatic, and it would definitely be more than enough for me to just keep doing Step Back full time. It would be perfect. It would be everything I wanted. But that is, you know, it's not smart to base your financial decisions on a law that might or might not actually come to pass. But yeah, it would be radically transforming if it did. So that's why I definitely still want it to happen. France and Belgium do this in Europe as well. If you speak a regional language like Breton or Occitan in France, you're basically Bort. Yeah, this is a reason why I wanted to go to Belgium instead of France, because of specifically Brussels. My guess is that it would be way easier for someone like my wife to find work in like one of the various, you know, European Union organizations, or like an NGO or something like that, you know, one of those like organizations that works with the EU. It'd probably be a lot easier for her to find a job in one of those places where she can work in English in Brussels than in like France, where France is a lot harder to find work that isn't in French. But then we could still live in Brussels and speak French, you know, when we're out and about in the town, and that my son could get a French education. That was my hope. That was why I was thinking about Belgium instead of France, but that might not be the case. The only other option might be to live in like a place like, well, I guess this doesn't work anymore because of Brexit, but there would be the idea of living in like, what's it called? I'm trying to remember what that city is called in the north of France. But you know, live in a city where you can just get on the Channel when you commute to work. That kind of thing. If you like the French influence, why not New Orleans? You've never lived until you were surrounded by the deep south and water. I've been to New Orleans. The main thing is that I wouldn't want to live in... the thing is that... And unfortunately, because Canada's economy is basically like in free fall right now, the fact that my wife has American citizenship is not something that has escaped us, and the idea that I might have to live in the US is not impossible at the moment. but or that we might end up having to move to the U.S. But I really, really like having healthcare, and also like New Orleans, like there's no place in New Orleans where well, there might be, but it'd be like really, really rural. But there's really no place around Louisiana where like French is like de facto the spoken language, or a place where like they can go to school in French. Like that doesn't really exist anymore, does it? New Orleans is a very fun city, but yeah, the main issue is healthcare. In Montreal, per se, it's possible for English speakers to work in Air Canada is mostly in English. I mean, yeah, it's true, but it's also not like, it's not difficult. Like it's not like, even if there are places in Montreal where it is functionally possible to speak, to have a job where you're mostly speaking English, but given that like that is not the law of the land, you're very limited, and also like your choices are going to be very limited as well. Tax on excess wealth removes the incentive to price gouge for profit, as there's no reason to rake in enormous profits if you can't keep a lot of it. Yeah, that would be an option now, wouldn't it? But then the government would have to actually tax our rich people, which I think the Canadian government is ideologically impossible for our government to do. They are like the two parties that run our country are so right-wing and so ideologically like I wouldn't even say it's ideological. I think that in many ways it's a religion. Like they are so religiously devoted to the concept of free market economics that they would never, ever, ever consider doing something like that. To the point where Canada was like literally falling, like Canada is literally falling apart because the government is refusing to put price controls on food. And the government's response was to ask them politely to stop raising prices. Like, wow. And also, like, what's it called? The fact that housing is getting so expensive, rents have jumped up a huge amount, and mortgages have jumped up a huge amount. And the response by the government was to give real estate developers a financial incentive to build more units. Because the problem is that we just haven't built enough units. It's not the fact that there's units that are going empty, because landlords have learned that if that keeping a unit empty is more profitable than lowering rents. Because yeah. Do Canadians get a lot of variable rate mortgages? I've got a fixed rate, so the interest rate never affects me. Yes. So I did learn this only recently, but apparently in America, if you get a mortgage for a house, you just get that one that, okay, this is going to be like the most like homeowner bullshit. So here's, okay, for anyone who doesn't know, when you go and buy a house, here's how it works. You get something called a mortgage. So what you do is you get a mortgage, you pay a bunch of money up front. It's usually some percentage of the amount that the house you bought is worth. That's called your down payment. Then you, once you get that down payment in, you then get an interest rate. This interest rate is typically based on the mortgage broker's idea, based on like your income and stuff like that, about how safe of a investment you are. But they typically go pretty low because there are multiple mortgage broker companies that are all in competition with each other. Now, the central bank basically puts out a number called the interest rate, which is basically the lowest that interest rates can go. That way, and what this does is that interest rates basically say say 5%. Say you borrowed $20 at 5% interest, which means that they can charge Like they can't charge more than about 5% of the like thing per year, or they can't make more than 5% of this per year or whatever. So when interest rates go up, it means that borrowing money is much more expensive, and all a mortgage is a loan. So the amount of money you have to pay that goes towards the bank goes up. If it goes down, then the mortgage rate that everyone pays goes down. Hey, Jesse B, thank you so much for gifting a Step Back membership. That's awesome. So that's another aspect, right? Then, so what happens is that our mortgage rates have been low for a very, very long time, and then to combat inflation, they shot them up like a huge amount in a very short amount of time. It was like the fastest that interest rates had ever gone up in history, and it caused a lot of people a lot of pain. So that's a thing. Anyways, so what Daniel Warren is asking here is, there's different types of mortgages, and basically it's when you get your mortgage taken out, you get that rate, and that percentage, that interest rate, is what you're going to be paying for that amount of time. So like, so if the mortgage but there's different ways you can deal with it. There's variable rate, which means that if the interest rate changes, your payments month to month will change. And then there's fixed, which is in the US, the thing, which is that the mortgage interest rate that you get when you get your mortgage stays the same and never changes. But the variable, like, I think that has to do something with the fact the housing crisis happened in the US, because like, what happened in the US is that when interest rates were really low, people were giving away these mortgages with really, really low down payments and really like low interest rates. And then whenever interest rates got risen in any fashion, the people who had these gigantic loans that they really couldn't afford, all of a sudden were getting interest rates and mortgage payments that they could not afford, and they had to basically just walk away from their house. They just couldn't afford to pay the mortgage payments, so they walked away. Canada has a mix. Has a mix of different ways that are normal. We don't have fixed rates like in the US. So I don't think there's any bank you can go to where you get one rate and it stays the same forever. What you can get is basically a mix. You can either get, there's three that I have heard of in Canada. There's variable rate, which some people have and have been utterly fucked by this interest rate change. There are some where you get fixed payments but variable rate. And these people are also getting super fucked by this interest rate change, because they basically are in a situation where their mortgage means that the interest rate does change, but that the amount that they pay doesn't. So what happens is when interest rates go up, their debt is increasing, not decreasing. And because they can't pay more into it, it means that like every month they're paying the same amount, and the amount of debt that they are in is actually going up because they're not even paying off the interest, the amount that the bank is taking away on the loan. This is the kind of shit that leads to those kind of loans is what leads to what you hear about in Japan, where there's like 99-year mortgages, where multiple generations are paying a mortgage on one place, because in order to have the payments be something that a human being can afford, you have to be in debt for decades. Our mortgage, the one that I specifically have, is called a fixed variable, or a fixed, I'm trying to remember what the actual term is called, but it's a semi-fixed rate, I guess I would say. What happens is that every 5 years, our mortgage gets refinanced. So we have one rate that we got in 2021 when we closed on the house. And in 5 years, in 2026, we are going to refinance the house, and we will get whatever the interest rate is at the time when that happens. Hopefully it's not going to be as bad as it is now, but it will probably not be as good as it was in 2021. Some sort of napkin math that I put together makes me think that when we get our mortgage refinanced, it's probably going to increase our monthly payments by about $1,000 a month. But we'll see. That's still mortgage rates can change a lot, so we'll see what happens. Calais, as Pim asks. Yes, Calais. Maybe the trick for us is to live in Calais and then have Kelly like work in London or something and take the channel every day. Although that sounds like a lot of money. That sounds like a long commute. And also, I don't know if you can do that anymore because now if you're a EU citizen, it doesn't mean you can get free movement into the UK anymore. So I bet you can't even do that anymore. Hey, Dazia asked, did you ever notice that I made special themed Discord icons? Right now, the festive one. Don't worry, I got the original icon saved so you can switch back. Yeah, I loved it. I actually should probably make like a special thing to set aside to just talk about how awesome Dazia is. Dazia, who you might remember from like years ago, who used to go, before they came out as non-binary, used to be Comrade Jeb in a lot of our chats in the past. Dazia recently came on to, because like our Discord server has like, I've been so proud that our Discord server is this amazing, it's quiet and chill. It's not super busy, but the Step Back Discord has always been this interesting hub where I think a lot of cool conversations happen that can't necessarily happen in other, YouTubers' Discords. I feel like we've gotten a really good, solid community that I really love. The main problem is that the Step Back Discord is now like I think it's like 5 years old or something like that. It's getting old, which means that because moderators aren't paid or anything like that, and I don't have the time to be a sole or to do really any moderating on my Discord server. It's been run by the community that runs it, but it means that over the years people come in and then they go. So we recently, Dazia got made a Discord moderator, and they were so good because like they actually they're the first moderator we've had that actually understands how Discord works, and they did a massive overhaul of the Discord server, complete like cleanup of all the channels. Everything's got like icons, and now we have like updates with the new year and everything like that. It's been amazing. And also Dazia, even on top of that, Dazia made this. Dazia made this anti-doomer action thing that's on the screen right now. And Dazia in the past has made tons and tons of very funny, weird Zoomer Step Back fan art, especially from like the days of like deep fried memes days. That was really great. And yeah, they've been great. They've been so awesome. I've loved the stuff that they put out, and yeah, even doing the small things like giving the Step Back Discord server a holiday themed icon, which is so great. I'll tell you, maybe I don't know if I can promise this too much, but maybe one of these days when I have money again and Step Back is actually making money, I'll consider maybe boosting. Like, I think I can pay some money to actually like get the server some like actual like some booster juice, and give it some levels so you can do more fun stuff with it. And maybe I should also maybe do a bit more, like make maybe more of a concerted effort to do something that's just for the people on the Discord, because our Discord is great and I should be involved with it more, and I feel really bad that I'm not doing more with it. But I also kind of like that it has over time evolved into its own thing that I do lurk from time to time. So there is that. Whatever y'all do not move to the U.S. It would be a last resort. Like if we were to move to the U.S., it would have to be because like my wife got some sort of really, really good job or something like that. Like something insane that you would be like just absolutely insane to turn down. And it would have to be enough that like it'd have to be a job where we have like ironclad health insurance and all that kind of stuff, because I am so terrified in the US of getting sick and losing all of my money. So there's that. French is the 4th most spoken in New Orleans. Spanish and Vietnamese are more spoken, yeah. You could look for French immersion schools. There are some in Sonora County, California. We have one. Yeah, there's French immersion schools in Canada, in Ontario, too. Like, if I don't move out of London, I'm going to put my son through French immersion. If we are at that, but if we are here, I don't know. If I move to... My guess, if I were to hazard a guess about how things, like where Kelly's connections and stuff are, we're probably going to move to Toronto. Or, slight chance, we might move to Ottawa. And if I move to Ottawa, what we might do is move to Gatineau. So that Gatineau is because Ottawa is on the border of Ontario and Quebec. So what we would do is if we got a job in Ottawa, we might move to Gatineau, which is on the Quebec side. And then, you know, she would commute to Ottawa across the river, which would be fun. You could always come to Vancouver Island, where I'm at. Real estate values are fucked here too. I mean, yeah. Vancouver Island. I'm trying to think. Is like, I feel like trying to be able to afford to live in the freaking fantasy island of fucking Vancouver Island. Like, I don't know. It seems like buying a house in Victoria would be like impossible. Which makes sense because Victoria and Vancouver Island in general is like one of the prettiest places in the universe, I think. It's one of the prettiest places in the world, in my opinion. And then, you know, Vancouver, which is not on Vancouver Island, but is on the coast, is its real estate is just as fucked as Toronto's is. Something hypothetical I was wondering the other day is that you might be able to answer. Suppose you're digging in your yard and you find artifacts and remains from 3000 BC. What should you do? You should call local... Almost every town should have a local museum or some sort of like local history thing. You might end up having to call your local university's archaeology department or something like that. But there are some places, especially in the UK, where like there are laws where if you find stuff and you don't report it, that's a crime. So I would probably call like the local museum, or I would call like the local university's archaeology department or something like that and report it right away. But usually there is like, it's harder to find, but there usually is somebody to call to have them come and look at it. To be fair, the neoliberal consensus is kind of collapsing at the moment, so taxing the wealthy might happen again. Sure, but I really don't think that the Trudeau government's going to do that. Neither is the Pierre Poilievre government going to do that. I literally only bought a townhouse because I was able to lock in a rate when it was low a few years ago. Variable rate mortgages seem so dangerous to me. Yeah, the only thing is that people who like variable rate mortgages were sold as being like a really, really smart decision because a lot of people thought that interest rates were going to go down or that they were going to stay stable. And usually you can you can get away with like a lower down payment or something like lower. There's usually fees that get waived if you are okay with paying a variable rate. So for a lot of people who saw the interest rate as being like really, really stable, it hasn't changed in years, nobody would fuck with the number because it would kill the Canadian economy, which it basically did. So a lot of people bought variable rate mortgages because they were like, that's the smartest option. It's safe. And then, you know, shit went down. So yeah. Are you listening to Lorenzo Camboya Ervin podcast on rent and housing? No, I'm not. Imagine being able to afford a house. Yeah, I know, Pim. The only reason why I was able to afford a house was because my grandmother died. Of things that, yeah. That's the main. It's the main thing. Ooh, this is an interesting question. Francisco asks, of all the topics I tackled this year, what was my favorite one that I knew nothing about before research? So kind of looking at a quick thing of this year, I would say So there's a couple things. So like ones that I knew nothing about. I would say that my transgender history video involved a lot of history that I did not know about that I learned quite a lot while making. And I thought that was really cool. I really liked reading. I didn't, when I was doing my, okay, it looks like we're good now. When I was doing my AI video, I really liked that. The research for that video, I did not know a whole lot about some stuff. It was really fun to get to read a bunch of Marxist theory on technology, and at the same time, I also really enjoyed researching all of the computer science articles on AI, because like anyone doesn't know, when I was doing my PhD thesis, or when I was trying to do my PhD thesis, because I dropped out of my dissertation or whatever, when I was trying to do my dissertation research, machine learning was going to be a large part of the work that I was doing. I was working with large language models, or at that time, but would become large language models. And I was trying to use it because I was doing digital humanities work of trying to analyze finding connections and analyzing huge bodies of text that like a human being could not process all of it. Because I was trying to study how do you even, like the main methodological question of my dissertation was, how do you even do historical research when you are studying anything that happened in the age of the internet, because of the issue of there being just a sheer mass of sources. There's more than a human being can read, because history is hitting a sort of a problem in the field, which is that as you get closer to the present, which we will end up having to write history work about, you hit this like inflection point when the internet starts to really become a thing, where the amount of sources that exist on any subject becomes so numerous, and like primary sources and such, where there's just so much to read that it is literally physically, humanly impossible to do the research properly. And so I was trying to do a bunch of work that was going to be studying how we even approach history in that thing. And I was looking into a lot of machine learning, TensorFlow type stuff to like try to find these connections. And then I came back, and when I was doing the AI video, it's coming back all these years, and I read a bunch of articles to see like where like, you know, the sort of technology had gone. And when I learned about like transformers and like large language models and like machine vision and all that kind of stuff, like things got absolutely wild. And like, this is technology I knew about like, you know, 5-6 years ago when I was doing this research, and to see that it had like matured to such a point that it had like really become that had like been ready for like, you know, commercial applications, it was absolutely insane. And that research was really fun. Well, I think that was like probably the subject that like I had the most fun researching, but I did know stuff about that beforehand. So I would probably say that the trans history video was the one that I was the most interested in. Plus it has the upside, which is that because of that video, I met one of my friends in London because she reached out to me, and because I had made that video, and we've met up for coffee several times, and you know, we've become friends. Louisiana is a member of the Francophonie. They do have 26 French immersion schools in the state. One in Lake Charles, one in... that's interesting. I did not know that French was still that prevalent in Louisiana. Okay. I think you're on your PC mic because it's reacting when you move your Coke bottles. I can check, but I'm pretty sure, because I don't have any other microphones. There's only one microphone on my computer, and it's this one here. Sorry, that must have been loud. But it's the only microphone hooked up to my computer. I just had my mortgage refinance. It's going up by about $50 a month. I may be able to completely pay off my mortgage next year. That's nice. yeah, my hope is that, yeah, hoping that we can get the server to max boosted, because then we can do cool stuff like little role icons, which would make pronoun icons and server banner and such. Yeah. I would hand over the artifact over to historians or people who are studying it. Yeah, usually in a lot of places where you are, there are a lot of local museums that are usually made up of people who specifically study the local area. Like, I know that if I were to find, like, say, like, indigenous artifacts in my backyard, I know exactly the place that I would call because I've been there. But that's also because I was a history grad student. But there is probably an equivalent of a place like that. Getting a house for me had a Byzantine... Yeah. My grandmother dying led me to some weird things. Like, I technically am I'm a partial owner of fucking, like, mineral rights in some, like, random corner of Saskatchewan. I don't know. My grandmother was weird. Or I shouldn't say she was weird. She was financially weird. She had, like, a second-grade education and lived on a farm until her husband died when she was, like, in her 50s. And then she got a job as, like, a waitress at 50, having been a farmer her whole life. And then somehow, I don't exactly know the story here, but a couple things I remember happening is that she won the lottery, but, like, won, like, the sort of, like, didn't win, like, the, you know, the big Boku $1 million things, but won, like, the sort of, like, $100,000-ish type prize. And I guess $100,000 where she lived in Saskatchewan could buy her a house. And then she had some, like, now this is gonna unfortunately, you know, make her seem shitty, but she also had some friends who, like, left her their house, and she ended up buying several houses and was, like, renting them, I think, at some point. And then but she, like, still lived because she, like, was a child. She was, like, born in the 30s, so she was still, like, but for someone who, like, you know, had, like, a second grade education, was, like, balancing properties and, like, I don't know, somehow was doing all that, and then also lived, like, super, super, super frugal. So she, like, never spent money, and so ended up having, like, this huge ass pile of money. Huge. She had, like, I think she had like something in, like, the sort of $100 something thousand range in when she died, and that got split up amongst, like, me and my sister and my two cousins. But yeah, it was, I don't know. She just lived a very strange financial life. And then, yeah, ended up having, like, she has mineral rights because the area around where she lives in Saskatchewan, they mine potash. And so I guess, like, if they ever found potash on part of her property, they would have, like, built a mine there, and she would have made a shitload of money. Yeah, it's weird. Saskatchewan is a weird place. The more that you learn about Saskatchewan, the weirder it gets. Okay. I've been reading about the history of aviation. I don't get why people in the 20th century assumed airliners would always stay luxuries, even as they got cheaper and faster. I think there's, like, a lot of thoughts that in the mid-century, like, people have a kind of warped idea of how capitalism works when they're liberals. So the idea was that, like, because keep in mind, like, there's also, like, the whole Keynesian idea, and I think that they kind of stem from the same sort of not realistic belief. So, like, Keynes believed that as we got more productive, that the benefits of that would be evenly spread to everybody. So Keynes thought that, like, because of, you know, automation and technology and increased productivity, that by, like, the end of the century, people would only need to work, like, 3 days a week, because that would, like, they'd be paid the same, they would have all the benefits and stuff like that, but there would be fewer hours needed to do all the work they need to do. So you would make the same money, but you would, be work less. But they didn't anticipate that it's not how capitalism works, because capitalism, one of the number one things about it is that it has to get rid of costs at all possible, and the biggest cost in any organization is always going to be payroll. And so they didn't realize that if you can, if you get more productive and you can use that as an excuse, like instead of having 10 people working 3 days a week, you can have, you can have just 30. You could just have like 5 people working 7 days a week, and that is sort of the rub of it. Like they find a way to just make it so that they don't have to employ as many people, and the people who are working more. And it's the same thing about airline travel. They thought that, hey, if everyone could get it, everyone would just enjoy luxury. Everyone can enjoy luxury. That was sort of like the vibe of the mid-century, is that, things are going well enough that everybody will be able to enjoy luxury. But then they didn't realize that you could just, to give people hyper luxury, you can cut out most people from anything and just give a bunch of people a miserable life to work on, because neoliberalism, yay. Could you find out which tribe lived on what land and give those mineral rights over to them? The only thing is that I can't, because I'm not the sole owner of it. The mineral rights are split between me and my sister and my 2 cousins. And my 2 cousins are they are Saskatchewan boys, which means that they have probably have less than good opinions about Indigenous people. Wait, you pronounce potash as potash? I've never heard it pronounced like that. I thought it was a soft P, like as in potash. I don't know. My uncle was a potash mine engineer or something like that, and he always called it potash, but I don't know. I don't know what potash is. I just know it's a resource in video games sometimes. It's used for making fertilizer, as far as I can remember. It's that's the main thing I remember being told, is that potash is used in making fertilizer. All right, so I think I actually have a couple questions, so why don't we do those? All right. I was talking to my dad about when he used to be a navigation officer on a cargo ship back in the 1980s. He told me that if anyone ever got sick or injured, you had to either rely on the limited medical training of the first mate that was required to have, or try to radio a ship with a doctor on board. Apparently the best bet was either a cruise ship or a military vessel, and get them to talk you through what you needed to do. One thing I found curious is he said that Russian ships, i.e. the Soviet ships at the time, always had a doctor on board. Like, even if they were just small cargo ships with a few dozen men, like the ones that my dad was on, they'd always have a doctor. What do you think why do you think that might have been the case? That's a fairly easy answer, actually. So the reason is because in capitalist, like I'm trying to see how I can frame this, because this is like, basically is that doctors are cheap in the Soviet Union, while they were not cheap everywhere else. Like, a doctor in the UK is expected to make a pretty decent wage, even with the NHS or whatever. They're expected to make a sort of upper middle class professional sort of professional managerial class income, right? Soviet Union did not have that same thing. Everybody theoretically made the exact same amount of money. Doctor, lawyer, janitor, miner, all of them were treated equally. You went into those kinds of like jobs because you did a test and you were seen to be apt for it, so you would go through it. All the education was provided by the state. Every part was run by the state, which meant that, yeah, you could do that. And a lot more people became like doctors and engineers, per capita in those countries, because if the Soviet Union needed more engineers, they would find more engineers and make them. So if they needed a doctor for every ship, they would train a doctor for every ship. And they would probably, and it was easy to do because you didn't have to pay them like a doctor, like you didn't need to pay them in the same way that you would pay a doctor here. That's the main bit. Potash is a primary ingredient for industrial fertilizer and explosives. That makes sense. Maybe I think there might be some other things, because like my uncle, who was that potash mine engineer, he died of brain cancer, and some people there was some grumbling that he was not alone in that, and that there was like a handful of people who were involved with specifically the sort of like working with the machines that did potash mining, that might have been might have been exposed to something that gave them brain cancer. For the record, that bit about doctors made it come off as if I was saying that the Soviet Union was bad for that. I don't think it's a bad thing that people, doctors made the same amount of money as a janitor. I don't think that's a problem. That is a feature of communism, not a bug. And if anything, the fact that every Soviet ship could have a doctor on it shows why that would be useful. And the fact that the most powerful people in the country still lived in apartment buildings is also a feature, not a bug. So my dad's theory at the time is that all the doctors were KGB agents. I mean, that might not also be as wrong as you think. Likely the doctor was probably the most educated person on the ship. So they could easily be the people who, if they weren't in the KGB, they might be the people who, give reports to the KGB. Because if you think about it, ships would be a place where a lot of Soviet citizens would have their exposure to non-communist countries, right? So that would be a thing to keep your eye on. Just instantly get to the end of capitalism where one big company and call it socialism. Paul V, I think I've joked about that on Tristan Won't Shut Up years ago, where I said something around the lines of be real, if we just nationalized Amazon, you would have a planned economy overnight, Amazon is such a big, powerful logistics organization that if the government just walked in and nationalized the entirety of Amazon's infrastructure, bam! You have a completely structured, planned economy overnight. You're done. All right. All right. Let's see. CJ, let's see. CJ's got a question here. I'm interested in history, but would really like to be better about deeper learning of topics, as my problem is that I have a fairly broad and surface level knowledge. I very much enjoy reading, but sometimes don't know what I should read on a given subject. As an example, I'd like to learn more about Palestine, but I don't know where to start in regards to finding things to read. Is there something that's a reliable source for finding other reliable sources, I guess? All right. I know this question is a lot to understand, and if you rather get no, CJ, this is a great question. I get this question. I get different versions of this question fairly often, and I'm going to make a faux pas because somebody. I was talking this morning how I have the makings of an entire response video in my head to the H-Bomber guy plagiarism video, because I have thoughts. I have thoughts, but I also don't like the idea of because Harry's a friend of mine. I don't really want to make any comments that, because if I were to make a video that politely talked about some disagreements I had with Harry in his video, or some things that I think could have been better explained, it would come off as me trying to start shit with him. And that is not a thing I want to do, because Harry's a friend of mine. I respect him. I respect his work deeply. And I think that he is smart and clever and empathetic. And his stuff is always like the top tier quality stuff. But one of the things that I did have, one of my critiques of the plagiarism video is that he kind of shit on Wikipedia a little bit in a way that I wasn't too happy with. As somebody who, I was doing, part of my PhD research corpus was Wikipedia, because I had this idea that I was going to study how something gets integrated into historical narrative. Like, I was kind of, part of my dissertation research was I wanted to study, like, in real time, how we see something go from being like news, happening right now, to recent events, to, recent history, to sort of the integration of it into the greater historical narrative. That was sort of my PhD topic. And one of the things that I was going to do with that is study the edit history of Wikipedia as a way of an event, to try and, see that process through, right? And in doing the research to make that happen, I went down the rabbit hole of starting to understand the Wikipedia editor community, and like the ethics and the sort of rules and the huge amount of effort that people do on a volunteer basis to make Wikipedia work the way it does. And when Harry kind of dismissed Wikipedia as a sort of suboptimal source, I thought that was a little insulting to the massive amount of volunteer work that people did. Luckily, he wasn't as dismissive as other people have been, and there was some parts where he talked about it being redeemable or being useful. But I think that there was a part, at least in the video, where he talked about this is the part where he was talking about Illuminati, I want to say, where he used it as shorthand for bad researching or bad practice. And I disagree with that. And I will point out that I think that Wikipedia is a great piece of work. And I think that the volunteer community that makes Wikipedia what it is are doing some of the most important, work for, educational modern stuff. You still have to be on your toes, because, it is, people say anyone can edit it. There's actually a lot of caveats to that rule, but you still have to be a little bit aware. But the overall, especially on articles that have any sort of popularity, there is a dedicated community of people who are very into that subject, who take it very seriously and try to make it of the highest quality product you can make. And also because it is usually run by people who understand the subject, who know it very well, and are trying their best to make the best, most impartial, description of the thing that they're talking about. One of the biggest treasure troves to understand any subject is to go to its references section. And if that isn't that is one of the best first places to go for any subject. Because basically what you're going to find down there is a list of all of the probably most relevant, most modern, most important sources on that subject. Once you get those, you have a nice reading list to start with, and you can dig down into those and find some amazing stuff. And you'll also then have an idea of who the people and authors, and if you read the footnotes, the conversations that are happening surrounding that topic. And I think it's an invaluable resource that everyone should be more invested in. And but yeah, so there was that. So let's see. I never got the wiki hate. The wiki hate comes from the fact that I think that it comes from the fact that it's not peer reviewed. It's not always, at least, done by experts. It's usually done by hobbyists and enthusiasts. And to an extent, anybody can edit any page. There is that is something that throws a lot of people off, because it means that anybody can post anything in these articles. I would say that that is based on a misunderstanding of how Wikipedia works in its depths, because one, it's not universally true that anybody can edit any Wikipedia page. Different articles, usually depending upon how controversial they are, have different levels of lockdown for how hard it is to put in an edit. Like, for example, evolutions, the evolution article, the climate change article, and the abortion article are all on like super massive lockdown, which means that any edit to those pages has to be approved by a bunch of people who are like basically a committee focused to making sure that this is the most impartial and scientifically accurate thing that of this version of this page that it can be. It's usually a community built around maintaining these topics as best as you can. And oftentimes on other articles that aren't as locked down, there are people who are very intense Wikipedia editors who basically keep their eyes open for edits on certain pages that they are interested in. And if they see something that is changed, they will typically review it almost right away. The part where Wikipedia gets bad, the part where Wikipedia can be more fraught with issues, is not on those places, but it's on the pages that don't get a lot of attention. For example, probably the worst, the thing that I always talk about is how I did a piece of Wikipedia vandalism that then wound up in medical school textbooks. That's the thing I did. So there's that. Something my dad did admit is that Russian ships would help you in the situation you described. Kind of reminds me of how cosmonauts and astronauts often view each other with respect. Yeah. Makes sense. He was only mocking Illuminati / James for reading articles directly in their videos or going to the source list and pretending they had found all those sources themselves. There is that. Yeah, that is definitely a problem. I have a friend named Xander. He's a professor now. He's a psychology professor. And yeah. So, oh man. Okay. So Xander is, I don't know if he makes much content anymore, but he made some, his whole thing is that he made like cute and quirky science and history videos. Okay. As a sort of as a psychologist. And he and Xander, who is the guy who makes these videos, again, friend of mine, we've met each other several times, sweet boy. When he was doing he made a video on the belly button, right? Yeah, he did a video on the belly button, just as much scientific stuff that he could find on that subject that you could find, and it was great. It was a great video. And during that, I, as a goof, because in the video, one of the things that he did is he made this joke because he was referring to this ligament that is connected to your belly button. And he took that and it had this long and very boring name. And he was like, you know what, scratch that. I'm calling it the Xander ligament for the rest of this video. I, as a goof, made a Wikipedia edit to the Wikipedia page for that ligament and wrote that it had the nickname, the Xander ligament. And I updated and I made as the citation for the reference the video. And the thing though is that sat there for several years. Because, the Wikipedia page for a random body part that very few people study or are interested in didn't make it that long. Problem though, and it did eventually get changed, but after like a couple years it got changed. But then by the time it got changed though, because it was in the Wikipedia article, it ended up being added to a bunch of random shit. So like we found that the Xander ligament was connected to like there was like a lot of like, and because like the thing is like anatomy is one of those things that like, doctors have to study in like a huge deep detail. So it ended up on a bunch of like flashcards for like anatomy class. But then we also found a couple like schools where like they were putting on their like medical school slides that this was called the Xander ligament. And even I think not a journal article, but like a sort of blog post that a big journal made that was sort of like a write-up of an article, used it in the article. And so like it got like really prolific, this like one tiny piece of random Wikipedia vandalism. And it showed, I thought it was really fun and interesting. I'll put a link in the chat to, he made a follow-up to the video about 4 years ago where he actually went in depth about how crazy it got. And so I'll put that out there. By the way, do I think that it's a problem for all mankind is that it treats cosmonauts and astronauts as way more hostile to each other than they actually are? Maybe in the earlier seasons. I feel like I mean, I think that you could write it off. Not that I want to make excuses for it, but I think that you could explain away a bit of like the increased hostility in that case because of the sort of nature of the point of divergence in For All Mankind, that the Cold War's space dimension is a lot more geopolitically intense, and so there's like, it's a bit more like, you could explain the hostility as like, these countries are still way more in competition with each other in space than they are now. Which would, to me, make a lot of sense. Although by the most recent season, they're supposed to be on good terms, and most of the discomfort that comes between them more has to do with the fact that there's a political shakeup happening in the Soviet Union. But yeah, oh man. And what I do like also is that there is now on the Wikipedia page for that same ligament, if you go to it now, there is now a subtitle of society and culture, which talks about the incident. So now it's official Wikipedia. Because I think a BuzzFeed article got written about it. So it's probably like the most like, it's up there with a couple things, because there was like that and like another thing too, it's one of like two things that I contributed to that became kind of like reasonably large memes, but then like, because my name wasn't attached to it, I never got like, it is like, it's a thing that I like caused to happen in the world, but it's not attached to me. And this is one of those two things. So I'm kind of, it's kind of funny. And then also, looks like Xander even wrote an article about it in a journal, so. It's appeared in a medical textbook of obstetrics and gynecology. Jesus Christ, okay. What a domino effect. Yeah, for sure. One thing I noticed about For All Mankind is that the actress playing Alita is 22 and her character is, I think, around 50 in the show, and they do absolutely nothing to age her up at all. That is true. Yeah, Alita is like, yeah, I think she's like 20, in her early 20s. And she's supposed to be playing like a 40-year-old now. And they haven't done a whole lot to like age her up except give her a couple gray hairs, I think. It's the same story as, there's another actor too who they did that with, I can't remember what that girl's name is, but she plays Kelly on For All Mankind. And she's also supposed to be in her 40s by season 4 of the show, and they haven't aged her up a lot. Then there's also like the people who are like in their 40s, like the actors are in their 40s, but they have to be in their like 70s. Like, I can't remember what her name is now. Who's she played by? The actor who plays Margot Madison, whose character, the actor's name is Ren Schmidt. She's 40, and she's playing like a 70-year-old. Yeah. Then there's also Joel, what's his face, the guy who was also in House of Cards, and he was also in the Suicide Squad, and he was also in the first season of Altered Carbon. I don't remember what his name is, but he's that other actor who he plays Ed Baldwin on that show. Do you think Ron Moore wasn't counting on getting 40 seasons? Yeah, probably not. I mean, I like the fact that you get to like like the aging up is getting worse now because they really have to go hard. But I like the concept. I like the idea that you can tell a show where like an intergenerational story is happening over multiple decades, and I think that's really cool. I like that you get to see characters who grow over their entire lives. I'm wondering what it'll do, because now, like, since they seem to be going like one decade at a time per season, like if it gets to like season 7, you're getting into the 2030s. And the show seems to be pretty popular. So if Apple gives it, 7 seasons, it's going to be taking place in the future, which might be interesting. Because right now it takes place in like the time when I was in high school, which is fun. The Crown just recasts them every 2 seasons. I think that's a better approach. It's not a bad idea either, honestly. But yeah, I honestly don't. It doesn't matter that much. I wanted ancient Anglo-Quebecers' explanation on why the Liberal Party of Quebec is still the most popular party in the Anglophones, Allophones, even after all the corrupt things they've done. Mostly because I don't think there's another party to choose from. Like, the Liberals in Quebec tend to do well because if you're not a French nationalist, you basically have no one else to vote for. So if you are, if you're an allophone, which is someone who doesn't speak either English or French as their first language, or if you're an anglophone, which is about 1 in 5 people who live in Quebec, or if you're indigenous, you really don't have anybody else to vote for. I honestly don't mind the aging up thing, though, of For All Mankind. I mean, it could be better, but I'm more forgiving on that kind of stuff. I like the idea that these are actors who really know their characters and they can kind of keep going with it. I don't mind it. But I'm more forgiving on, like, things not looking perfect. You know, it's on the concept also. Has anyone else, like, the thing is, like, Apple TV, right? Apple is, like, nobody is watching Apple TV, but, like, it has some banger shows. You know? Like, they're, like, not only is For All Mankind a banger show, but they also did Foundation. Foundation was a really good show. I mean, it still is. Season 1 was rough. I did not like season 1 of Foundation, but season 2 was decent. There's also Severance. Severance was a really good show. Then there's friggin' Ted Lasso. Everyone was talking about Ted Lasso at one point. I haven't seen Foundation. We'll check that out. Definitely do. I will say, season 1, not great. I mean, season 1 is okay, but it's tough. It's tough to follow. Unfortunately, it's attempting to adapt a book series that takes place over literally thousands of years and is like about the longue durée future history of humanity. And to make a show that is like character driven and has like things work with that is very tough. And season 1 feels very disjointed and confusing. But season 2 seemed to pick up the pieces and make it much more cohesive. Oh yeah, Silo's on there. I haven't watched Silo yet, but it's on my list to watch. Right now, I am getting caught up on... So I just like a couple days ago finally got caught up on Foundation. And then tomorrow or now I'm getting caught up on the new season of the new-ish season of Good Omens. It's like some of the shows that I like watched with Kelly, but Kelly doesn't really like science fiction anymore. So now I have to kind of watch it on my own, and I'm much slower at watching TV on my own. So I'm trying to get caught up on watching Good Omens. Once Good Omens is done, then I don't know after that. I'm thinking, like, let me look at my little TV Time app. See, like, technically, the next thing on the list would be for me to... there's also that new What If show just premiered. And I liked What If, but that's just because I have extreme Jeffrey Wright bias, in that I really like Jeffrey Wright, and I'll watch anything that has Jeffrey Wright in it. And Jeffrey Wright is in What If, so I'll probably end up watching that. But after that, after Good Omens is done, then it's supposed to be watching The Mandalorian, the season 3 of The Mandalorian. But... the thing about that is that, like, is that because, like, the Star Wars stuff, like, I'm not a really big Star Wars fan. I don't think I've watched much of the Star Wars extended media stuff. And now that it's all getting all fucking convoluted, because I tried watching the new season of The Mandalorian, and they kept introducing a bunch of characters I'd never heard of. And then they have that new show, Ahsoka, which I was told, like, is like an extended season to like some show that's for babies that aired like 10 years ago. And so I'm like, okay, I guess, like, and then everyone was like, oh, but it's the best show for babies you'll ever watch. And I'm like, okay, well, Avatar was good, so maybe that can be the case. So part of me is like, basically, number one thing, I have to decide that I actually want to keep up with what's going on in the world of Star Wars, which, you know, is a tougher question in of itself. But then I was like, well, if that's the case, shouldn't I, maybe I should, do, a thing where I watch all of the Star Wars stuff. Like, you know, start with, like chronological order, start in the 70s, watch the movies, watch the shows, and then I can actually, keep up with what the fuck's going on in the sort of Star Wars show universe. But that's, that's a big project. Other than that, it would be watching, The Wheel of Time, because The Wheel of Time I thought was shit, but then everyone was telling me that it's good actually, and so I'm like, I guess I have to go and try watching Wheel of Time again. I have an idea for a time travel story where we contact a world that fought a devastating world war in the 1700s and survive a built solarpunk utopia. Sure. If the characters are interesting. If the... What's it called? If the characters and the plot are interesting, then yeah, could be good. How do I feel about alternate history going past our present, like Harry Turtledove's ends World War in 2031? Sure. I mean, it's speculative fiction. You can do whatever you want. Fuck, Good Omens Season 2 was kind of trash. It had some good bits, but most of it was just so boring. Good to know. If you're going to try to watch the Star Wars animated shows, check out the podcast A More Civilized Age. It's a watch around by a bunch of leftists from mostly Waypoint. Okay. Yeah, my idea is that I would go and find a list of like every single Star Wars piece of media. So I would go and watch like all of it in order, which would mean like starting with A New Hope and then like kind of watching everything as it came out going forward, including the cartoons and including the movies that are bad. And so I could actually get an idea of what the fuck everything is. In general, I think I'm just not that hot on Neil Gaiman as everyone else seems to be. Yeah, Neil Gaiman has like a sort of like, you know, it has kind of like a Tumblr-y sort of... Neil Gaiman seems to me to fit in like sort of like super Who-Luck, sort of that kind of corner of the internet, you know? People who were teenagers in like the early 20-teens who really liked all those British shows and Supernatural and like posted on Tumblr and that kind of thing, which was very much like, you know, not my scene, but Neil Gaiman seems to fit into that kind of thing. And I will say, like, we tried watching the American Gods show and I hated it. Season 1 was okay, but season 2 of American Gods was awful. Like I'm trying to think of like things that Neil Gaiman has made that I actually enjoyed. And I think there's like Coraline. I had to read Coraline for school. And there was the movie. He wrote a couple episodes of Doctor Who that were okay. Can't think what else is like a big... Can't remember. Sandman. Oh yeah, I did read. I think I read the first volume of Sandman, and it was okay. I definitely wasn't blown away by it. That's for sure. That's sort of where I'm at on that. But yeah, there's some people who are like really into Neil Gaiman. You don't like Doctor Who or Sherlock either, so that checks out. I haven't had to see enough of Supernatural to have an opinion. I mean, Supernatural is a CW show at its core, so you have to kind of take it as that. What I would say on Supernatural is that it has 5 really good seasons, and that 5th season ends with a perfect series finale that wraps up all of the storylines of the show and is like, you know, ends it with a pretty awesome, like a pretty like solid story of the week / navigating a strained relationship between two brothers / like a bunch of other things about the Bible and apocalypse and all that kind of stuff. Solid show. Very fun. But then they added like another like 8 seasons to that because it got so popular and the CW never cancels shows. So it just kind of kept going forever. So it was a good 5-season show that then had another like 8 seasons tacked onto it. If you ever did move back to Toronto, would you enjoy being close to Thought Slime again? Yeah. One of the reasons I'd be excited about moving back to Toronto would be to spend more time with Matt. We're really good friends, and I would like I was in Toronto a couple weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. We went to Toronto, and I got to hang out with Matt and some other mutual friends, and it was really nice. And I'm like, oh my god, I miss these people so much. Even though we hang out literally like every week on Discord when we play Pathfinder together, but even then, I'm like, it was really nice to, you know, get together in person. Sherlock, I would agree though, Paul, is not an awesome show. I watched a good chunk of it, but I couldn't finish it. It's very much like kind of like how, to me, I'm thinking about it this way. The way that that I like kind of got into Sherlock, and it's because I hadn't figured out the whole thing about what's that guy's name? Stephen Moffat. So like the fact that I like watched Sherlock because eventually, you know, you end up getting Stephen Moffat's bullshit, right? You end up like Stephen Moffat ends up, you know, you realize that he's not as clever as he thinks he is, and his shows have like witty banter, but their plots are kind of meandering and don't go anywhere. I think about the same way that a lot of people got into Lost because they didn't realize that J.J. Abrams is good at some things, but he also is not good at like writing conclusive stories that go anywhere, and loves leaning into mystery for mystery's sake. I think Stephen Moffat is like in a similar vein, where like, you know, he's his shtick, and you realize that he's not as good as you think as it comes off as. You're like, oh, this actually isn't that good. How's Slime doing? If that's okay to, no, I know he doesn't stream much anymore. I mean, he's had a hard year with all the sort of, he had some stuff, like he had like some water damage in his house and stuff that really like messed up his life for like several months. So there's that. But I think it's pretty rough, but it sounds like it's on the mend. It's getting better, not worse. Have I seen The Expanse TV show? One of the best science fiction shows of all time. Have I seen it? Yes, I have seen The Expanse. It is really good. I have read most of the books, too. Yeah, The Expanse was one of my favorite TV shows. And I'm looking forward to finishing the book series. The next one of those I need to read is I need to read Babylon's Ashes is the next Expanse book for me to read, which I think is roughly it's roughly like the novel that season 6 of the show was based on, which was the last season of The Expanse, I think. Have I seen the show Lucifer, loosely based on Sandman? No, I haven't. What'd you do if your kid was 16 and he came home and said that one of his classmates was dating a 23-year-old? Oh, geez. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know how I do. Go audiobook, by the way. Jefferson Maze is amazing, and you can do them while doing other stuff. Maybe I made a rule against. So I listened to the audiobook for a lot of the Expanse books, but the main problem I ran into is that I ran into this problem with a bunch of like books that I was reading. I just if audiobooks work for you, that's awesome. For me specifically, for fiction, they don't work. I don't read any. I still always have some audiobook on the go at all times, but when it comes to fiction, I find that my retention is too low, and I can't. I have several fiction books that I have read via audiobook that I can't tell you anything that happened in them, and I have no memory of events that happened. So I've had to reread several of them, to the point where if it wasn't for the fact that I read 5 of them, The Expanse is another one that I was thinking I might start over. But because of the show, I think, because of the show and what I do recall from it, I think I'm just going to start off where I picked up, but read it fully through. The other one is, the book I'm reading right now, The Jasmine Throne. I tried reading the audiobook, and it was the book that made me realize that I can't keep reading. I can't keep doing audiobooks because it was too much and I couldn't follow what was going on. And I was several hours into it and I could not tell you what was happening. So my thing is that I basically focus on, my audiobooks are usually things that are educational or sort of like self-help or businessy type books. And then I read, words for my, my fiction. On that note, it is 2:00, so it is time for me to go pick up that car and go do whatever I can with the very limited hours of the day I have today. So, everybody, I'll be back in 2024. I definitely think I'm going to have to do, over the break, I'm going to take a look at how streaming plays, like I kind of look at streaming in like sort of an ROI sense and see what streaming's new fit will be in sort of the way that I do my work. I don't know where it's going to sit. I have to crunch some numbers, but I definitely won't stop streaming. But who knows? Maybe like regular streaming might be a little bit less regular. But either ways, this has been really great. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and I'll see you guys next year.